All right, I'm going to start the live now. All right, I'm going to start the live now. Okay, so we are live. So I'm just going to spotlight myself here while we do these introductions, and then I'm going to let Dr. Patel take it away. So hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're going to start in just a minute here. I'm just going to give people some time to hop on, but thank you for joining us. And feel free to say hi in the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat throughout the talk. So if you have any questions at all, feel free to pop them in the chat. And welcome. Hope everyone's having a good evening. All right. Awesome. So I think we're probably good to get started here. So I can start us off and introduce Dr. Patel. So Dr. Patel is an astrophysicist, science communicator, and author based at the Institute for Earth and Space Exploration at Western University. Parshati is currently on secondment and away from her position at Western. She has a PhD in astronomy and planetary science and exploration from Western University. For more than a decade, Parshati has been sharing her passion for space with Canadians, especially youth, through local and national outreach initiatives, both online and offline. Parshati has extensive experience raising space awareness amongst the masses. She has developed and led numerous space-themed classroom workshops, after-school programs, and public events, trained graduate students and educators, engaged with the media, produced podcasts, developed and coordinated social media and web content, and fundraised and managed several outreach initiatives. Parshati serves on the board of advisors for SEDS-Canada and Zenith Canada Pathways. In addition to consulting for science books, she also authored a children's book called My Books of Stars and Planets in 2021. And so without further ado, Dr. Parshati Patel, take it away for how to pitch yourself.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and giving me this opportunity to share what I know. I absolutely love the idea of thinking of how I would pitch myself to someone in various situations. So I guess today I'm going to be sharing with you things that I think about and taking a lot from my experience in communications and also weaving in a lot of what I've learned, about branding yourself as well as you do, throughout your career. So I will start with sharing my screen here. And before we even go any further in actually looking at, how we pitch ourselves, whether it is to a prospective, place you would want to work at or someone you would want to, collaborate with, someone's research project that you're interested in, or someone you just want to connect with, at a conference or even via LinkedIn. So even before we go that, I would love to learn a little bit about you. So we're going to use Slido. So if you can go on your phone, on your laptop, onto this website called slido.com and enter the number that's on the screen. I will turn on the first question. I just want to learn a little bit more about you, your background. This gives me an idea on who we have in our audience, and you will see that this becomes very important when you're thinking about how you're pitching yourself, because one of the most important aspects is who you're talking to. What do they want to hear? What would they like? So this is my 1 ounce of doing that. Obviously, this in a webinar format. So I see we have undergraduate students, recent graduate here. The numbers are changing a bit. I can see it on the screen. I do realize that it takes a second or two for you to get to see the results. We have recent graduates. That's amazing. We have a large spread, which is great. A lot of the techniques that I'm going to be talking about really applies even if you are planning to present your research or your project, if you're doing it in a class, to your fellow students or to your supervisors. So definitely a great opportunity to take all the different nuggets that I'm going to talk about today. Amazing. We have lots of undergraduate students, followed by graduate students and recent graduates. Amazing. Okay, let it flow. I will not stop it. I'll just switch to my presentation, but feel free to add your what currently applies to you. So let's get started. We're going to talk a little bit about how you are going to pitch yourself, and the ways we're going to think about is, what is it about you that you're pitching? Okay, so this again, it really depends on the situation, but what you're doing in that situation, you're bringing yourself, okay, to pitch. And that includes everything from your skills to your experience to who you are as a person. So we'll go a little bit more in depth and explore that part, as in what part of you you're bringing in the conversation. And then we're going to talk about who you are talking to. This is where, as you remember, I wanted to learn a little bit about you so that I can kind of tailor my presentation, even though I have my slides, tailor my presentation and probably examples that will resonate with you. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the why of why are we doing this? So whatever situation, I think it's a really great question to ask yourself, is why am I doing whatever you're planning to do, whether it's pitching yourself to someone or planning a presentation or planning a session with someone, workshop, whatever that situation be. A great question to ask is, why am I doing this? Okay. The next one is, how am I going to do this? How are you going to pitch yourself? And I'll give you guys some tools and techniques you can do that, along with what is that you're going to include in your pitch. So we'll go through these questions. Who is this for? Why am I doing this? How am I going to do this? And what information I'm going to include as I do this. But before we get to kind of those four basic questions, I really want to explore a little bit about you, because when you're going to pitch yourself, you really need to know yourself, your strengths, the skills that you bring, your passions, etc. So, first thing to think about, what is my story? What makes me me? How am I different from just another person? And, I think of this myself as if I was sitting in a classroom, let's say everyone is doing the same degree as I'm doing. What makes it, what am I doing that's different from other people? Okay, we are all getting the same degree. Maybe the experiences you have had, maybe the research projects you're working on, or maybe your interest for using this particular degree is a little bit different. So thinking kind of from that perspective, I think, is very important. And then the second thing to think about is, it's not just about your work that you're going to think about. You're also going to think about, what are my hobbies? Do my hobbies, align kind of with what I'm presenting myself as? So I obviously cannot see who's in the audience, but if you know me, if you see me, anywhere, you will see that I'm all about space everywhere, whether it's in my hobbies or whether, I'm doing in terms of work. For me, space is my passion, and kind of blends into my life, personal life, as well as my professional life. And that kind of has become my brand, because, when someone thinks of me, they immediately think of space, right? Or the other way around, they think of space and they're like, oh, Parshati, right? And that it has naturally happened. I did not plan to create, but I've recognized that you really need to recognize what people know about you. So what value proposition, do you bring? How do others describe you as when you're not in the room? Okay, so that's very important. And this is probably the hardest thing to do, is to look inward and figure out what makes you you, and what people say about you behind your back, or what you want them to say about you behind your back. And the moment you start realizing that, you think about it yourself in a very different way when you're pitching yourself, because all of that passion, all of that excitement, all of those experiences, whether they are professional or personal, will transcend into your pitch. Okay. Next, again, still dealing with, about yourself. What is your goal and who is your audience? So, for example, if you're looking to get a summer internship, okay, and you're planning to say, okay, I want to apply to X number of summer internships. What is my goal with internship? I want certain kind of experience over the summer that can help with, it could be personal, goal that you have, or it could be with your degree or your passion. And you think about, okay, who's going to be my audience? Well, I could pitch to, professors on campus who are doing research. Oh, I could go into industry. Again, very dependent on what your research area is or what you plan to do. But you really need to figure out what you get really excited about, what your goal is with that pitch, and who your audience is going to be. And once you have that, one of the things you really need to think about as you go, further in your career is, what niche are you developing? So, I just gave a little bit of example before is, everyone in your class is kind of going for the same degree. What is it to you that makes it different from everyone else in your class? What's about you that's different? And so that's where you create a niche. Maybe you combine two things. Maybe you are doing this degree, but you also have a certain experience that you can combine. So, for example, I know someone from my undergraduate, time. That person was doing physics and music, and they were combining the two. And I was also doing a physics degree, right? So, but you have this other things that can really bring you to make your niche that sets you apart from other people. So you really need to think about, what is the niche that you are creating? And this can change anytime. So my brand 10 years ago, very different than what it is now, and will definitely be very different from 10 years from now, because your passions change, your hobbies change, your experiences make you who you are today. So maybe you experience something that fundamentally changes your outlook towards what you want to do with life, and so your brand will evolve and change accordingly. So you really need to be okay with your brand changing over time. And you need to think and revisit that particular aspect every time you're planning to pitch yourself, okay? One of the things that I have noticed is, I gravitate towards people who are genuine, who are consistent in terms of, how they are. And the reason I put here is, got to be online and offline. So if I'm meeting you, virtually right now, I'll be the same person if I'm meeting you in person, okay? And that talks a lot about trust and how excited people feel, when they meet with you. And if you're genuine, people care about you, people want to listen to you, what you have to say. So keep those in mind as you think about, how you're preparing your personal brand, okay? And again, it changes over time. Don't be afraid of it changing over time, okay? I know it gets a little bit harder. Oh, I was known, or I was doing this so many years ago, and now it has changed. And be okay to reflect that amongst other people. So if someone is wanting to recommend you, they know that now you're no longer kind of interested in that area of research that you were doing, or area of job that you were looking for. You're no longer interested. So make it evident. Probably not, do a Facebook post or or LinkedIn post or anything like that, but just some people that you connect with, who you're pitching, wanting to get an internship or a job. You want to be open with them, as in what you're exactly looking for. Okay. Next, we'll go to those 4 questions on how to figure out what you're going to pitch. So kind of coming back, recapping on the questions I mentioned. So to prepare your pitch, you will need to know 4 things. First of all, who am I talking to, right? That makes a fundamental difference on what kind of content you are going to include. And then also why you would want to talk to that kind of audience, okay? And then you definitely want to know how you're going to do it. So this actually 4 questions applies in almost everything I can think of. doing, whether it's for work, whether it's for study, if you are preparing anything, I think these 4 questions are very important. And once you go through that, it really helps you to figure out, what exactly you're going to be doing. It makes your life a lot easier. So in terms of the first question, who is your audience? Okay. You really need to make sure that your message, whatever you're creating, is tailor-made to the audience that this is. So for example, you're pitching to a company, you want to make sure that A, you know about the company, and B, like, what they're doing, etc., and that you incorporate that in your message, right? So you would have to know what that company does, what values they hold, what they look for in people to hire. Few things you can ask, why should this person care about whatever I'm going to say, right? Why would it resonate to them if I say something? So think things about, knowing what the person on the other side or the people on the other side would like to hear. Okay, so if I'm applying for a job, they would like to hear about my skills, about my experience, what I'm good at, what are my strengths, things like that. So you have to, if I'm going to do that for someone that I just met and I want to just, connect with them, that doesn't make sense. Maybe I want to share what my passion is with them, or maybe why I would like to connect with them, because, they're working on something that's really interesting. And I'm very interested in that, but also I have kind of passion for something that's similar. So you see how the two examples, like, they both are different. So your audience really matters, and knowing, their background and their knowledge is important. And then at the same time, you also want to make sure that you speak the same language. So if you're talking to, let's say, someone who is also, in your area of expertise, you'll probably, be okay using terms that you would find in the area of your expertise, versus if you're talking to someone that's from outside of the area of your expertise, you want to make sure that you are not using the terms that they are probably not aware of, because a lot of the times, a lot of people feel not so comfortable in a situation where if you're using certain words, people are like, I don't know what that is. So they feel uncomfortable because now they've missed a part of the conversation they're trying to have with them. So just be mindful of that. And the moment, you learn a little bit more about your audience, you should be able to figure out what kind of, terminology you can use, whether you can use, what we like to call jargon in, like, traditional STEM studies, or whether you want to simplify your message so that whoever is on the other side is able to get the message that you would want to get. Okay. Next, let's move on to the why. Now, this is something kind of very intertwined with who the audience is. Why this person, or why these people, right? Why am I doing this? And obviously the reason can vary depending on the situation. Everything from just want to engage, certain audience. You want to bring awareness about, hey, I have XYZ skill, I have XYZ experience, I'm looking for a job, you could hire me. Or it's just about sharing knowledge and passion about a topic that you may have, right? You could connect with people on that so easily now, especially with social media and whatnot. It's just a great way to make connections. But you could also do the same thing to empower other people with, correct information, especially in this era of, information, misinformation, disinformation. And then, like I said before, if you want to convince someone to hire you, you definitely need to have that thought process in your mind. Why am I doing this, right? And then obviously with the who, you're thinking, why would they care about whatever I'm saying? So how do we figure out how you're going to say it and what you're going to say? So the how is reliant on a few things. The first part that I like to talk about is the art of storytelling. So if you're talking to someone and you describe them a bit about yourself. You're just like, hey, my name is Parshati. I was born and brought up in India. I moved to Canada to study astronomy. I was so passionate about it. And many years down the line, here I am. I have had a career in that field. I've moved fields. I'm now, in the field of science communication and education. If you put it in a form of storytelling, if you tell a story, people are more likely to remember that than, saying, oh, I did, a PhD, I did a master's, I did X number of projects. Rather intertwine them in a story, and people are more, there's more possibility that they're going to remember. And one of the things is, when you make it personal, if things resonate with the people, they will remember those things. So, for example, if I'm listening to someone's story, maybe they have had the same struggle as me. Maybe they took the same course as me. Maybe they went to the same university as me, and that piques my interest, and that makes me remember them, right? So it's the same thing for other people as well. As you were telling them a story about yourself, they really find, there will be connections that can be made from the story that you are saying. And remember that the story just doesn't have to be always about the success, because you can also, when you talk about your struggles and when you talk about your failures and how you learned from your failures, which is probably the most important part, all of those actually showcase who you are as a person, right? So it's not just about, I did XYZ and I got XYZ grants, all of that. What do you really want to show? How you work towards them, right? So that is probably more important than actually the numbers, because a lot of times we think about, things in numbers, and we know that on resumes, that's kind of what people kind of put. I know, like, everywhere you go, you're like, okay, start with your, how much you accomplished, what you did, in terms of numbers, quantify everything. But when you're talking to someone, when you're pitching yourself, utilize the art of storytelling, because then they're going to remember how you told the story of you overcoming an obstacle and achieving this thing, rather than just saying you achieved it, right? And the way to do that, the way to frame your story is, like, you talk about your results, but you really talk about your impact and the process. So you hook them with your results, saying, let's say, just as an example, I would say, yeah, I have done a PhD, but, it took me 4 years. I had to write, observational proposals. I had to work on, lines and lines of codes to develop around 8,000 models of stars to figure out, what was happening around these stars. And that kind of story is more important than, just stating out what my PhD thesis was, because depending on who the person I'm talking to, maybe they're not from the field, maybe they don't know what exactly I was working on. So thinking about, results, but really the impact and the process of getting to those results. So think about your story in that format. And if you carve your message accordingly using that storytelling, I think that has more impact on people, and they're more likely to remember you. Okay. I know I'm giving you guys lots of opportunities to think about and reflect on yourself. And I think the next section on the what are you going to include in your content, you are definitely going to have your tools that you're going to utilize to bring all of these things that I've been saying together. Okay. And so we're going to look at two things that you can do. And I'm going to specifically, knowing that you are either undergraduate student or a graduate student or, recent graduate, we're going to think about content, or the what in your pitch, as a few key messages that you will be developing. And I'll give you a tool on how to kind of develop a key message that's very simple, kind of couple lines, maybe 1 or 2 lines, to kind of talk about whatever that be. And then also think about banking your experience and skills. So let's say you're an undergraduate student, first year undergraduate students, maybe you don't have a lot of experience, but you're going and looking for your, first internship or first possible summer research opportunity. Use your skills and your bank all of them. So let's say if you helped out with a program in your high school, or maybe on the side you like to skate, or you like to do play volleyball, whatever that be. Bank those are skills and experiences you're having, and you can actually draw from those experiences to show a lot of the skills that you have. And every time you do something, and this is, kind of learned from my own experiences. I wish I had done this in my undergraduate and even graduate degree. I only started doing it after I graduated. And so that was my mistake, but I'll pass on to you. Please bank every experience that you have, done. This, whether it be participating in a group project where you led, let's say, a certain part of the project, to even organizing, let's say something like this. If you're a part of an organization where you are helping organize something, put that in basically a bank of your experiences and skills. I do that through my CV. I put everything I do now. I didn't do that over during my undergraduate and graduate. I tried to remember back in the day what I did and add it to my CV. My CV is really where I look for, okay, what have I done on this particular topic, or what skills did I learn from this particular experience? And all of that is very important when you're trying to think of examples depending on audience. So for example, if I were to go give a job interview and they were like, oh, tell me about a project that you worked on and it didn't go well, and how was your experience with that? And so that bank of experiences and skills that I have in my CV will help me with that, because I'll be like, oh yeah, I worked on this project, many years ago, and this is what happened. And that's kind of how I can craft my story from that experience. But in order to do that, you have to have a bank of these, because you will not remember 5-10 years down the line what you did. But at the same time, you never know where you will have to pull out those, those skills and experiences to talk about what you have in your bank. Okay. So that's something very important. And I would highly recommend you to either have a Google Doc or somewhere where you just put in a line or two about these experiences. So let's start with the key message. Now, this is a very simple kind of one-liner, or if you want to call it one-liner, it's a couple lines if you were to write it out, but really a simple way of kind of either describing the work you're doing, or the experiences you have had, or what you're passionate about and what you want to pursue. Can really use this for anything. It was really developed kind of for the research, talking about your research, but applies to a lot of situations. So it's called the Randy Olson's ABT method. Dr. Olson has books that you can read as well on this particular, how to craft key messages and things like that. But I particularly love this one because it's very easy and easy to remember, even if you need to pull it out of your back pocket someday while you're talking with someone. So the way this goes is you use the word "and" to kind of set up the stage. So think about this as a movie, okay? You are giving a brief background with that first statement that is between, before and after the end. But then there's always a twist, right, in the movies. Otherwise, it will be just a plain same thing happening. You need to have a twist in there. So the but here kind of sets up for that, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? Or what is a problem that, you would love to solve? So kind of thinking about future. And therefore, you either want to work in that area, or, so you use the therefore to kind of provide the solution. Therefore, you should hire me because I have X number of experience, I can solve these problems, right? So just to give you an example, we can say, I'll use my research as an experience. So we know that there are massive stars, stars that are much more massive than our sun in the universe. And we know that they form very rapidly, but because they formed in dust around them, it's really hard for us to see how they're actually forming. Therefore, I use a computer model to understand what is happening closer to the star, just to understand how they're forming and how their formation process leads to where they are in their cycle. So just as an example, I just randomly came up with that. But you can really use this for any situation, and just think about what you want people to know in the situation. You could use that in a job interview for, something that is part of the job posting that got you really excited about applying for this, and how you could bring solutions to those problems that they have noted. So I really like using ABT method in different situations. I also feel like it's a great way to keep it short, so it's not pages and pages of something, but it is a small, short, punchy thing that you could use while you're talking to someone, or even preparing to talk to someone. Okay. The one thing I would say that in this format, if you want, and depending on your audience, you could use metaphors, or you could use statistics if you like. Again, depending on your audience. So just think about your audience first before you prepare the key message. Okay. So that's one way of doing this. It's good to prepare maybe 3 to 5 key messages, depending on, let's say if you're going to a conference, you're going to, prepare a few depending on the different things that interest you. If you're interested in looking for someone who you could work with, and what you are interested in, how you could bring some kind of, value to their research. So prepare a few, and it gets easier as the more you try it out. Okay. All right. So now let's talk about how would you do this a little bit different way. And that's called an elevator pitch. You may have heard about this. It's very popular. Thinking about how can you take anything, whether it's, like I said here, summarization of your work or promotion of your work or yourself. And, if you're pitching yourself, it's really to the point, like very much like 30 to 60 seconds. But you want to grab people's attention and hold it for that entire journey of the elevator from first floor to 10th, 12th, 30th, or whatever that be. You really want to utilize the short amount of time you have to grab their attention, keep their attention until they get to the floor that they need to get up. Okay. And as I have said on the slide, there are 2 important things: audience and time. So you only have this limited amount of time, and you need to know who your audience is. So if you bump into someone that you have wanted to meet for a very long time in an elevator, and you only have let's say 30 seconds or 60 seconds to tell them who you are, or why you really, why you wanted to meet this person, and how you would like to connect with them. Right. And so you really want to make sure that they are interested, you pique their interest to be able to, get their email address to connect with them after. So we'll go through the 3, steps on doing that. And again, this is a great way to practice. The more you practice, the more you can do it, at the back of your head. You don't even really need to write once you get really good at it. Okay. So the first step is doing a quick introduction. If the person doesn't know you, this is definitely a good thing to do, is to, in a simple term, just tell them who you are and what you do. So I just prepared an example for myself here, saying, hi, my name is Parshati Patel. I'm an astrophysicist by education and a science communicator, as well as an educator by profession. So just in a very simple 2 lines, giving them a brief, background about me, but it tells them, hey, my education was in a certain field, but I work in another field. So it gives them a little bit of idea of who you are. So if you're a student, you could be like, hi, my name is XYZ. I'm currently doing this degree, and I'm hoping to be, an engineer, scientist, whatever that be in future. And that itself tells them, who you are, what you're currently doing, but also what you aspire to be. Okay. If that's something you want to include, definitely go ahead with that. Okay, and do that in the first go, because then it already sets the stage for what the conversation followed would look like. Okay, so the second step would be background. So this is, what are your experiences, skills, or passions that you want to share with this audience? Okay, so in this particular example, I just again pulled from myself because I don't like to do that randomly. I just said, I have 10 plus years of experience designing and developing space-themed programs and communicating science. I'm very passionate about engaging and inspiring the next generation. So even with this sentence, that I just have 2 sentences. I also had 2 sentences in my first step, which is the introduction part. It really says a lot, even though it looks like a 2 sentences, says a lot. So if we decode this particular example, you can say it's already said 10 plus years of experience. So I'm already, telling them, I have X number of years of experience. This could really be also X number of, skills that I hold via doing X, Y, Z. It doesn't have to be a number that you need to attach. This is really how you want to present certain things. So I say, I have experience designing and developing. So again, using 2 distinct words, I'm not only designing, but I'm also developing programs, and I'm communicating science. So if you think what I had in the last slide, I already talked about what my education was and what my profession was. And so it connects here. So it should really be connected and shouldn't be fragmented, because then people will be like, oh, but you said your education was this, but then now you're talking about your hobbies. So like, how does that connect, right? So you want to make sure that there is a flow in there. And then I end with saying, hey, I'm passionate about engaging, and inspiring the next generation. What that does is bring people like, oh, that's very interesting. If they're passionate about the same thing, it would resonate with them. But it also sets stage for saying, oh, I'm interested in working with you. They might have the same interest as me. That's probably why I would mention my passion, right? To connect with them. And then last but not the least, the third step is really what your ask is, because remember, you only have 30 to 60 seconds. So there's only so much you can do. You could take this opportunity to be like, hey, I would like to connect with you, or hey, would you be interested in going coffee with me right now, or whenever you have time, whatever, your ask is, or maybe you want to set up an informational interview with them. You want to make sure you end with that, because you just shouldn't look like this person introduced and then what's next, right? What is next? Maybe you can ask them, would you mind if I connect with you on LinkedIn? Or would you mind if I connect with you on social media? Whatever you're asking, you just have that in mind, just so that there is what next in their mind as they're walking away from the elevator. So in here, I just, again, put in an example saying, I have been following your journey for quite some time. I would love to learn about you and your journey. Would you be willing to meet with me for a 30-minute coffee chat? So again, very specific ask, 30 minutes. Do you have 30 minutes for me? I would love to hear about you more. So these are 3 steps. You have to have, who you are, introduce yourself, set up a little bit of a background that leads to your ask. Okay. And if you just follow this, the more you do it, the more easier it becomes to do. And you can do many versions of these, envisioning who you're going to meet, what you're going to say, again, utilizing those bank that I talked about. Okay. And what you could do, depending on let's say if you're thinking about different opportunities, whether it's in the same field or different fields, you could write these down. You could have versions of your CVs that are very different. So you could have one that is very technical. You could have a bank that is very, based on your personal passions that you are exploring, but also has a lot of skills that you might be able to draw on, depending on what you are looking for. So Now, I know I covered a lot of information. I will pause here because I want to learn a little bit from you, as in what your takeaway was from this. And I want to spend a lot of time on Q&A, and that's kind of how I kind of scheduled this session, is to have the content, but really to kind of answer your questions. So I'll pause and kind of go back to Slido and turn on the next question so that you can go ahead and answer that. Let's see. Okay. All right. I know it will likely take a second or so for you to get to type away, but it's good to know what your key takeaway so far has been. And I'm also going to turn on the chat on my side. Amazing. Okay. We have someone who entered the number. That's okay. You can enter multiple times. That's totally okay. And I see some people are typing, so that's great. Pitch a story. Yeah, you're definitely pitching a story. And the story about yourself or your work. Use all your experiences. Yes, you never know what experiences you could use in whatever pitch you're doing, okay? And this is one of the things that I actually did not realize very early on in my life, that, even your personal experiences that has nothing to do with your work are as important as the work that you do, because those could highlight absolutely everything. I mean, I'm thinking about in interviews, when people ask you, describe about a time, and there's always questions like that are situational questions, and you could utilize so many of the experiences, work or otherwise, in those situations. So having that bank is so important. Knowing in your audience and your goal, yes, bank of skills and experiences. Know your story, what makes you unique. Yes, everyone has a story and everyone's is different. Don't ever think that, you're the same as everyone else. Everyone brings something different. Be honest about your interests. Yes, I think people like when you're honest with them in your ask, because it sets them, once you said your ask, it's kind of the ball is in their court, whether or not they want to say yes or no, or say maybe, I currently don't have time. Let's connect in X number of months, or, next month, or whatever that be. It really, at that point, you kind of leave it up to them. So always also frame your ask accordingly. Have a brag box. I love that. Oh my God. Can I use that? May I use that brag box? I love it. I'm going to title my my box as brag box. Oh my God. This is okay. That's an amazing word. Thank you for that. Leave people with an interesting story. Agree. If people are thinking about you after you've talked to them, you achieved what you were there to do. Amazing. Thank you for sharing those. Again, I'll leave this open for you to contribute to, but I'll just kind of, wrap up with my few key takeaways for this. So to have it, my key takeaway: know your audience. Do not do anything without knowing a bit about an audience. Sometimes it's hard knowing exactly, let's say, for example, if I'm planning to give a talk at a library, I don't know who's going to show up. Okay. Another example today, like I knew it likely is going to be undergraduate, grad distance, and recent graduates, but could be others too, right? So getting to know your audience, finding ways to get to know your audience, just like how I asked you, what best applies to you. That gives me an idea. So those bank of things that I talked about could really also help you change things on the fly, depending on who you are talking to. You go with a mindset, I'm going to be talking to, let's say, the CEO of the company. But when you enter the room, it's not the CEO. It's now, let's say, only the HR person. And so you change, you're probably not going to have the technical talk with the HR person. Maybe they might ask you some questions and you might answer. But maybe you were planning to have, showcase your ideas and whatnot for some of the things you have been working on, maybe to the CEO. So you can really switch your things if you have these bank of things. The brag box, which I love that. The next is identify your goal for each of these pitch that you are thinking about. What is your goal, and align things to it. Always have key messages ready, and then build your personal brand online and offline. And this doesn't even have to actively happen. You just do you every day and remember what you're doing, both online and offline, and it will continue to build over time. And then there'll be a time where people will remember you for a certain thing, right? So you're building your brand slowly. It doesn't happen overnight, and you have to be thoughtful as you build your brand. Okay, so I will pause here. So I'll just leave my screen up here, and we'll take questions. I'm here as long as you have questions. So I will just stop sharing my screen, and we'll take questions.
All right, I'm going to jump back in here. Give me 1 second. That's probably, there we go. Awesome. So thank you for your great talk. I think we had a lot of people contributing to those SlideGo questions. So I think a lot of people got some really valuable advice. And we actually have a question in the chat right now. So if anyone who's watching, if you have a question, please feel free to put it in the chat, and we will ask the questions in order. So we have a question from Rishi, who says, I have a first interview for a research position coming up, and I have no research experience, but I'm so invested in research and I don't want to mess up. Any advice?
Show your passion. That's really how you get it. Like, why are you passionate about it? Why do you want to get into it? And how this particular first experience will change and help you towards your goal. So, you may not have experience, but you already have a lot of skills. And so again, bank those skills, think about those skills as you are thinking about this interview, and think about, how this helps to get you to where you want to go. So when they can see that you're really passionate, you want to learn about research and maybe move into that direction, or how that helps you achieve a certain, goal that you have for yourself. I think people can sense that. People can sense if you're passionate about something. And so go in with that mindset that you want to share your passion, and you want to help fuel your passion with that research internship. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I completely agree with that. That's how I got into my graduate program.
Yes, me too. I think that's how I got my first research. Was I was an international student. For an international student, it's very hard to get a research internship. And I think I had to take a research course. So I basically had to pay to do research. But even for that, I had to find a supervisor. And this was in my last year. So my 4th year of my undergrad. And I had to really go around and be like, I want to do this because I want to get into this field. And if I don't get a research experience, I wouldn't know what it would feel like. So I wouldn't really know if I want to do this, right? And so this is actually how I said to the prof, and he was like, all right, let's go for it. So, they just need to know the sense that you are passionate and you will commit to, the research work that is planned for your internship. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And we have another question that just came in here. Someone's asking, do you have any advice specifically for SEDS-Canada space proposal applications? This person, I think, might be referring to our projects applications, or maybe just volunteering with SEDS. So I don't know if you have any advice for getting involved maybe in student organizations, and, as a board of advisor on SEDS, maybe you can shed some light on that as well.
Yeah, so I think getting involved in organizations when you're a student is so important, because you're going to network, whether it's within your committee. So let's say if you're working on the SEDS committee, you get to meet with so many people, build so many things, and you will likely be working with these people. If you're going to stay in the field, you're likely going to be working with these people, in the companies or in the field as collaborators, right? So you build network. And so I would highly recommend for everyone to volunteer. I actually, myself in my undergraduate time, I used to work at the I was volunteering at the Astronomy Space Society, Student Society at University of Toronto. That's really where I got my start, and I learned, and talked to people who share the same passion. And actually, I'm still friends with a lot of those people today. So you can see how lifelong, and that was a long time ago. So you can see you can form like lifelong friendships and support with those networks. And then in terms of proposal, again, think about who is it for, right? And what are you sharing? Why are you sharing? What does that get you? So if this is a proposal to apply for, a position, while you're passionate about something, you want to join the network and you want to, meet new people, you want to do good things for yourself, but also for fellow students. Think about that while filling out the application. So no matter which application you're going to fill out from now, you're definitely going to think about these things.
And we got another message from the individual asking more specifically about the SEDS-Canada projects. And so I've put our email in there for the projects team. So feel free to reach out to us if you have questions about the proposal itself. But maybe if I can maybe expand on that point, maybe do you have any advice on how a student could start a team to do research? How a student could maybe approach a professor when they're interested in a project? How would they, maybe what communication skills could they use to do that?
That's a great question. So a couple of different things. If you are at university, college, you are probably taking classes. Again, that passion. Oh, I think I'm raising my hand, so it's sensing my my hand as a reaction. Sorry about that, but you are already, knowing people who have the same passions as you, right? So if not, go around in your class and see, hey, I'm really interested in this thing. Is anyone interested in participating? Just casually ask people and see who is interested. And, you might pique some people's interest, and maybe some people know other people who might be interested in that. So, creating a team is just literally going around and asking people, and don't limit yourself to maybe people in your program, because you never know. There's, bringing people from other areas who may be, interested in parts of the research project, but not the whole research. They might have interesting ideas for you to do as well, like, incorporate in the research. So basically ask anyone and everyone you can think of, who would you be interested in this? I'm really interested in applying, and I'm looking for, other students to join me in this. And then for the profs, it's kind of the same thing. Think about the topic that you're going to be working on, and then who, whether it's in your university college or another university college, who fits well, and just shoot them an email and say, hey, I'm planning to do this, or we have a team of people who are planning to apply for this. We need a mentor in this particular area of expertise. Again, be very specific with your ask. What are you asking them to do? Are you asking them to be your mentor for over a year, for, what amount of time? What amount of time do they need to invest in being part of this, right? So be very particular when you send an email, as in what you're asking them for, because we all know, profs are busy, they're teaching, they're doing research, they have students, all of that. So you want to be very, very specific on their involvement and the ask. And don't be disheartened if you don't hear from them. Just send as many as you can, in terms of, find as many people as you can who might be able to help you or support you in your project. And then hopefully some of them will be willing to help you with that. But also don't be discouraged if you don't hear from someone for, let's say, 2 or 3 weeks. Just send them an email. Just be like, hey, just a quick reminder. I sent you an email, a few weeks ago or a month ago, and I'm just checking in. It's okay if you're unavailable, but it would be great to know if you are not able to help out with that. Just simple, very short emails, but very specific.
Absolutely. That's great advice. And I guess just to round us out here, I have a final question. I'm assuming a lot of people in our audience, being undergrad students, may be trying to break into the space industry for the first time. And so it's a very unique industry, and there are a lot of unique challenges for students to break into the industry. So do you have any advice specifically for that aspect for students trying to break into the industry? Any communication skills that they might be able to use when trying to land some internships or research opportunities in this industry?
Great question. I think there are a few things you could be doing. First is, I already said, being part of like organizations like SEDS or Zini, the volunteering can also get you a lot of connections. And then these will help open opportunities and doors for you. Because, for example, like if I know someone who is interested in, let's say, a certain kind of research, and I hear from my community, oh, like, I'm hiring a student in this area, I would connect the dots, right? So you would want to expand your network as much as possible. And a few ways to do that is to either volunteer. You could also be going to conferences, SEDS has an annual conference. There are lots of experts there. There are other specific conferences as well. So like, if you're in astronomy, there's an annual astronomy conference that happens. If you're in, engineering, I'm sure like they have their specific conferences that happen. So go to those conferences and take time ahead of the conference to research people who are going to be there. Prepare your key message and, your pitch on why you want to connect with them, what resonates with you, things like that. And then if possible, even send them an email ahead of time. Hey, I plan to be at this conference. I see you will be there as well. Would you have maybe 15 or 20 minutes or half an hour to chat with me? I would learn about XYZ, right? So making connections is the first point of, you don't want to just go and ask, do you have a job for me, right? Without knowing you and where you would fit best. Sometimes you might be, aiming for a job, but they might think you might fit for another job that they were thinking that might not even be advertised, right? So you want to think about making those connections as you go through your undergrad, and then that can really help widen your network. And once you let your network know, hey, I'm looking for, let's say, a summer internship, or I'm looking for a job, I'm graduating next year. That is really all you would have to do if you have already built your network.
Absolutely. And I mean, just to speak on the SEDS-Canada side, our conference will be coming up in January. So please check out our website for information. Tickets are on sale. So we will have a lot of great opportunities to network in the space industry there as well. And it's going to be a great conference. So feel free to check it out on our website to learn more. Okay, I think that is all the questions I'm seeing in the YouTube chat. So without further ado, I just want to thank you, Dr. Patel, for your time today. I think this was an amazing opportunity for students, and it was a great talk. And thank you, everyone who tuned in. We appreciate all of your participation and all your questions. And definitely stay connected with SEDS. There's lots that we'll be doing throughout the year. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. Thank you for listening. And Dr. Patel, I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, thank you all for being here. And I agree with, SEDS conference is one of my favorite things to go every year. So I absolutely love going. And I'm excited. It's going to be Toronto this time. So, hopefully we get to see a lot of things come back in. And I know we had earlier this year as well in person. So I hope every one of you will be able to join in person and connect and network for the opportunities that you will be looking forward to. So, and thank you for attending. I hope this was useful. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer them.
Awesome. All right, everyone. Thanks for coming.
All right.
I'm going to end the stream now.
Take care.